My name is Christina Clayton, first off, one of the co-directors of the Northwest Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. If you haven't been to one of our events before, welcome, and you'll hear a little bit more about us in just a few minutes. But today we're very excited to welcome again Sharonda Jamerson. She was here yesterday. I imagine a lot of people may have, I see in the chat, some folks may have come again today. And these are all recorded and will be posted. And there are certificates of attendance if you want something like that. We can't do formal CEUs, but we will have the slides and we do a podcast with her, and all that will be available within the next week or two. But we're very excited to talk about the topic today. Do you see me moving from intolerance to acceptance? We also want to always start with our land acknowledgement. And I know this is a virtual event, but we here in the University of Washington are based in Seattle, and we really want to always acknowledge the lands on which we reside. These are unceded lands and ancestral homelands and traditional territories of Indigenous peoples who have been here since time immemorial. We take the time to say this because we always want to pay respect to people whose lands were forcibly taken, and we want to always commit to learn how to be better stewards of these lands and always fight for advocacy and support and education and action to repair this wrong. So if you want to know about the Native Land website to learn about more about your lands, we'll put that in the chat. Okay, next a little bit about our network. So the MHTTC, it's a long, complicated name, but basically we are, funded to help support the mental health workforce, and anyone can take all of our courses. We're funded by SAMHSA, or the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. We have 10 regional centers: a National American Indian Alaska Native Center, National Hispanic and Latino Center, and a network coordinating office. And if you haven't heard, there's a network just like this that we are based on from the addiction side of the field. They've been around for probably 30 years, and prevention. So they are about where we are in our 5th year. So we support resource development, dissemination, training, and technical assistance, and workforce development. And we are in Region 10, which is proudly Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, but it's virtual. So everyone can come from wherever they are. So it's great. Our specific MHTTC here at the University of Washington is in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. And the goals we have are the same as the network: to accelerate adoption and implementation of mental health related evidence-based practices and other best practices, heighten knowledge and skills in the workforce, foster alliances and address training needs among our region, and to give free publicly available training. Our area of focus for the network is evidence-based practices for serious mental health issues such as psychosis. But as you can see, I'm a social worker by training. We're going to talk about a lot of different things in our training events. And so we're excited to focus on integrated care, suicide prevention, diversity and equity, school mental health, peer support, trauma-related care, and others. How do we do that? Events like this. We have online courses that are also free. Everything we do is free, so that's pretty great. We post these recordings of webinars. We have learning communities, and we also have a podcast. If you don't get our newsletters and announcements, you can sign up, and we'll put that in the chat. And so you can learn about more resources that you want to learn about. In our network, we did agree that we always want to be using affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in the work we do. And so we came up with the slide you see here. We just always want to remind everyone there's a lot of different perspectives in the room today, and we know that you mean to be respectful. There's a lot of active chat going on yesterday, and we just want folks to feel respected and non-judgmental and inclusive and accepting. These are touchy subjects sometimes, and they will strike a nerve, and they will maybe hit home. So we just want to be mindful of that. Couple of logistics. So you're muted and off camera because there are, close to 200 people on this event just at this moment. We'll share the video recording and slides. You can use closed captioning if you like. If you have a non-content related question, so something not that you're asking Sharonda, but our team. So we have Kristen in the background helping out today from our team. Put that in the chat. If you just want to check in via the chat, comment among each other. That's where you want to do that. If you have a content specific question for Sharonda, please put that in the Q&A. We can't copy and paste it, and I will not be able to keep up with the chat because it was pretty active yesterday. I imagine the same today. So we will maybe ask you to please put your questions into the Q&A. We'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. So thank you for that. Lastly, your feedback is crucial. So not only are we required to do these surveys, but the surveys we're going to ask you to do at the end of today and remind you tomorrow, literally 2 minutes. I know I sound like probably the NPR fund drive or something right now, but it'll literally take you 2 minutes. And we do collect that information, and we look at that information. It's aggregated, it's not identifiable, but we share that with our presenter. We look at it as a training team, and we look to see, if this is content you want more of, or if you wanted something different, and how we can do that. So, and then a disclaimer, SAMHSA funds us, but they don't have any opinions about our specific content. Before I move on to Sharonda, I did want to just go back to the poll. Thank you for so many people participating. If you want to go ahead and share the results, Kristen, and for folks, I think once Kristen shares that, you can see who's in the room. And so thank you for putting in all the others. We can only do 10 answer options in Zoom. So apologies, we'll never get all the right ones. So thanks for all of those others and how long people have been in the field. So that's just helpful to know who's in the room today. So now to the good stuff. Sharonda Jameson. I have been stalking her since 2019. I joked yesterday because I saw her at a conference, and it turned out she was in Seattle, and we were nowhere near Seattle when I saw you. So glad that you're back with us today, and I found you on the internet. Sharonda obtained a master's degree in clinical psychology in 2012 from City University College in Seattle, became certified as a chemical dependency professional in 2007. Her experiences include developing, implementing, and presenting EDI trainings to associations of healthcare professionals, healthcare providers, schools, and community-based organizations. She has also presented at state and national behavioral health conferences, of which I've seen a few by now, on the topics of DEI and healthcare equity. She presents with confidence and passion. I think that's an understatement. I really do. I think that is probably just the most understated thing that will be said this year. So Sharonda, thank you so much for being here. I'll let you take it away.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you all. I'm gonna bring up my screen and share. Uh-oh, not that one. Let's see. Can you guys see that?
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, duh. Hold on. Hold on, you guys bear with me for a second.
Oh, you're totally fine.
Okay, here we go. Now, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, so
you want to do the slideshow?
I can't find a slideshow.
It's on the top.
File home.
Slideshow, animation, slideshow. Keep going to the right.
This is not my strong suit, you guys.
No, it's totally fine. The slideshow. So right next to animations where you were, slideshow.
Okay, hold on.
You got it.
Chat, poll, Q&A.
Yeah, close that out. So this is in your PowerPoint, not the Zoom.
I know, but I can't get to it.
Because it's showing on the top.
Yeah,
it's. Just do what you did yesterday. This is fine. You still see the stuff, I think. But now you're muted, so don't. Got to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, because that's one thing I can't live without is you talking. So I don't care about your slides, but we need to hear you. All right. There you go.
Okay, I'm gonna take a breath. For those who are joining me again from yesterday, as you know, I get so excited about this topic. And one of the reasons being is, like I said yesterday, the lies are out there. I love learning. I love learning something new, and I love sharing it with people, hopefully to expand your mind, and so you can do things differently. I know it's hard. I'm going to read what's on the screen, but the picture just speaks volumes. I just really want people to break out of the mindset, you've always been in, there's always something new to learn. There's always something to take in. There's always a better version of you that can show up. And I do believe that information is transformational. I believe that wholeheartedly because it changed my life. And if you haven't figured out by now, I am not the traditional presenter or a therapist. I think outside the box, and I love who I am. And I hope that you become to love me too. And this is what I was saying yesterday. That when you show up your authentic self, the world have to accommodate you. It have to embrace you. It does not do you or me any good to be anything different than who I really am. I'd be depriving you and myself of what I feel I have to offer. Okay, now we're ready to get started. Demonstrate the respect for your experience. This is what's on the screen. People constantly and regularly will try to tell you how to think, how to act, how to feel. I'm telling you to own your own feelings, to show up the way you want to show up. Be free, break the chains, like this person in this in my first slide has. Translate your don't be passive aggressive. Don't agree with something that you really don't agree with, right? Don't like something you really don't like. Don't go along with things because those types of things cause more stresses in your life. Just let your truth be known. Listen to yourself. Value your own words. Value your own truth. Because people's systems are constantly telling you, oh, don't do this and don't act like that. That's not proper. That's not this, that's not. If I listened to that, I wouldn't have got this. I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't want me here. I've seen these highly educated, very whitewashed people do these presentations, and I see people going to sleep. I'm just going to be honest. I don't want that. Give your accurate location. Whatever you feel in this moment, going through this presentation, allow yourself to feel it. If you feel guilty, explore that. If you feel shame, explore that. If you feel liberated, explore that. Because this is about you. This is not about me. I'm here to serve you, help you, challenge you, and provide you information. Demonstrate that you're coachable. Demonstrate that you don't know everything. Demonstrate that you're willing to open your mind and you're not, just want to show up for a fight. I am not scared of a fight. I'm just saying. Not that I couldn't fight anybody today, but I'm not talking about physical fight. I'm talking about a verbal one of knowledge and education, that kind of fight. And then let's move on to our next slide. Learning objective. Increase awareness of how unconscious and unspoken racism compromise clinical decisions and outcome. I will definitely give you an examples of that. Create a safe environment where clients can be seen fully as they are without pretense. Allow people to be who they are. Create a cultivated environment to where they can see that they're welcome. Decrease harm to marginalized communities. That is the goal. Do you see me? Do you see me? Do you see my color? Do you see that I'm a Black woman? Do you see that I am straightforward? And when I moved up I'm from Illinois, by the way. I moved up here. I've been here for about 30 years in Washington State. And my directness is a culture thing. It's not a disrespect thing. But in Washington State, there's a lot of passive aggressive people, and they like you to sugarcoat things. They don't like you to tell them the way things really are. And when you do, oh, you're disrespectful and you're rude. No, this is me. And I refuse to tone myself down and be anything other than because to make you comfortable. A lot of times when people try to judge you or tell you what you need to do, is to make them comfortable. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you getting to know me, and you constant exposure, you begin to get comfortable. So moving from tolerance to acceptance. One day I was listening to somebody on the TV, and it was like, we need to teach our kids tolerance. Can I tell you, tolerance is not a good word? I know there are people who tolerate me. I get that. But the people who are in my circle, that's because they accepted me. And I have a variety of my circle is very diverse and it is very inclusive. So we're going to talk about what is the definition of tolerance and the difference of acceptance. And then you tell me if you want to be tolerated or if you want to be accepted. Tolerance, one's capacity to endure the existence of other people's opinion or behavior that one does not necessarily agree with, or their food, or their smell, or their, whatever. We need to understand these things, not tolerate. Accepting, the action of consenting to receiving or undertaking something offered. I'm offering you the way I am. Are you willing to accept it? Or just are you willing just to tolerate it? And trust me, I've been around the block enough times to know when someone's tolerating me versus when someone is of acceptance of me. But I will tell you that those people who used to tolerate me, after certain events have happened in society or after they've seen, certain things in their own family, whatever, they've said, okay, you got a point. Let me try to get to know you. And they have worked their way around to accepting and not just tolerating and putting up with me. Okay. Yesterday, I talked about the elephant in the room and how the elephant got in the room. I will tell you that racism is hidden. Racism, classism, sexism, all those isms are written in our everyday language, starting with our dictionary. That started in the 1800s. And I don't know if you guys, so for those who was here yesterday, for those who wasn't here yesterday, I apologize. We talked about how, and we'll talk about a little bit today, how, I'm losing my word, y'all. White supremacy, how white supremacy was created before the origins of the United States of America. So people's opinions of others was already created before we got to where we are today. Those things were passed down. So you can say that started in 1800. How is it showing up today? The reason why it's showing up today is because when white supremacy was created, white people took that on as their identity. And so that's how it keeps coming forward as this is part of my identity. So sometimes people get offended when we have these conversations, not because of what's necessarily being said, but it's how they're taking it. They're taking it as a personal attack on them as a person when it has nothing to do with them as a person. So if you ever wonder why are people getting so upset and bent out of shape, that's because they honestly feel like you're attacking them when we're only talking about a topic. So here is a historian, and I think he's out of the associated at the Hutchins Center for African American. I think he's out of Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. This historian it was just like he was doing some research, and he started doing some research on textbooks from the 19th centuries and the turn of the century of the 20th century. And what he found was how whiteness was pumped up, and whiteness is the American way and American identity, and anything outside of that is not so much. So it is very hard to see people when you're not talked about, when your culture is not talked about, when or when it's been taken away from you, and you get disciplined or punished or whipped or raped or beat or whatever, if you so embrace what you know to be true about yourself. They totally want you to deny yourself of who you are to acclimate to what they need you to be in order for you to fit their narrative. And this is the thing. A lot of things that have changed in American culture has been done by people who come into the society or has come to America. So like the Canadian doctor from Canada, he's the one who created this white supremacy identity for America. And he said people of African descent are essential to do the white man's work. Do you think it just stopped at African Americans? We will talk a little bit more about the others that this applied to. And if you wasn't here yesterday, what America has done was has created a blueprint that they see work, and they remove African Americans, they put Chinese in there. They take the Chinese out, they put Muslims in. They take the Muslims out, they put LGBTQ, and they take them out. So whatever works, well, it's not whatever works. They know this works. And that's why they do what they do, so they can keep white supremacy supreme. Even people who oppose slavery believe that others could never be absorbed in white society. And these are people who opposed it. No, it's not right. These are my brethrens. You know, God said, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I don't feel like doing it. Let them do it. The 19th and 20th century textbooks taught that white supremacy precedes the origin of the United States. Every aspect of social interaction, particularly in the 18th and the 19th century, was dominated by white identity, and white supremacy became the expression of American identity. These sentiments can also be found in American Christianity. For those who are not aware, the caste system is who gets resources and who don't get resources. America's Christianity is based in the caste system, but it's not just American religion based in the caste system. I'm finding that it's in other countries as well. Colorism is a real thing all around the world. So you wonder, this is not just in America. You would get treated, the darker your skin, the worse you would get treated. The darker the skin, the harder it is for you to receive services. So what do I mean by that? And even with these, you know, how you go wash your hands and you just stick your hand underneath there and the water turns on, or there's some other technology that's out there. The darker your skin or facial recognition, the darker it is, the harder it's going to be able to read you. Recently, the ox monitor, you know, the little thing that the doctors put on your finger to see what your oxygen levels are. The way I understand that it reads that it shows how much lighting come through. Well, the darker your skin, the more melanin you have in your skin, the more off that oxidometer is going to be, because it's saying that you have more oxygen in your blood than you really do. And that will prevent you from getting the type of services that you need in the hospital, versus if you need to be hospitalized, or if you don't need to be hospitalized, or if you need to be sent home with oxygen or not. Those things are off because the darker the skin. Just so, and there's a YouTube on that, and so the research is out there. So let's talk about what happened with the Chinese, right? Because I said they'll take one group of people out and put another one in. 20,000 Chinese immigrants toiled through back-breaking labor during the frigid winter and the blazing summer. Does that sound familiar? To build the transcontinental railroad. Hundreds died from exposure, landslide, accidents, and diseases. Does that sound familiar? And then what's on record is that America will only let the Chinese men come. They didn't want the women to come because they didn't want them to get married and settle down here. And then once the Chinese got done building what America wanted them to build, then they told them you could never be a citizen here. Sound familiar? Let's talk about Mexico real quick. This was a picture of Mexico in 1845. And at the time, it included California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and part of Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Why am I saying this? We always talk about the land grab they did from the Native Americans. I hardly ever hear the land grab they did from Mexico. And then when Mexican people want to come up here, you want to tell them that they can't come and live on the land that was theirs in the first place? For one. For two, another reason, because of global warming, it's very difficult for them to live on their land right now because they can't produce the food or the nutrition that they need to survive on that land. Why can't we let our brothers and sisters from the South come up here and repossess the land that was theirs in the first place. No, we want the people from the north, as Trump said, oh, we want those good people. We want them to come because they look like you. And you can continue to create the white supremacy because and you can stop and slowing down the browning of America. Now, fun fact, not so fun, but still a fact. When this society, when America got created, they wouldn't let people from India come over here and live over here when in the 1800s, right? Because people from India was under, this is my understanding, the people from India was under the British. And if you're under the British, then you're considered white. So if you come here in America, how are you considered white as dark as you are? So it will mess up their system. So for a long time, they wouldn't let people from India come over here in America because it will mess up their system. And they will have to give these dark people from India the same privilege that they gave white people, and they weren't having that. How, this is in my way. Let me see if I can move that. There we go. How did the colonial government treat the Native Americans? The colonial government saw the Native Americans as savage and viewed them with a judgmental opinion. Sound familiar? The Native Americans was pushed around and had moved for several times for their own safety. The vast majority of the Native Americans died from war and different diseases brought to North America by the foreigners. I'm gonna pause right there, because it brings me to the Tuskegee, not the Tuskegee, I'm sorry. The experiment, Tuskegee, Tuskegee, is it Tuskegee? Yeah, experiment with the syphilis. Now we know that happened in America for 40 years, but did we know that that same experiment happened in Guatemala? Again, to the brown people. White public health doctors went down to Guatemala and did the same thing to those people. And you can just Google it. You'll see it. Smallpox, measles, scarlet fever, tuberculosis, sexual transmitted diseases. So, they rape some people, right? They didn't have immunity. They didn't have immunity to these type of diseases at the time. So it slowly killed the Native Americans widespread. Eventually, the United States had a policy on Indian removal. Now, when slavery was over, states had the option to send the remaining Blacks back to Africa. You know why they say they didn't? Because they didn't want to do the labor. Sound familiar? And we say when it comes to our Mexican brothers and sisters, they gonna take the land. I mean, I'm sorry, they come up here to take our jobs. Okay. Now let's be honest. The work that they did in the field, backbreaking. Under President Obama, that was a mass exodus back to Mexico. Farmers tried to get Americans to come and farm their lands. They lasted 2 or 3 days and wouldn't do it. So much food went to waste because no one wanted to do or was capable of doing or was willing to do that backbreaking work. So please stop saying they're coming up here to take our jobs, because you couldn't do their jobs. A lot of people couldn't do their jobs and didn't survive doing their jobs after 2 or 3 days. The con. The white people lied to the Native Americans and took all their land and used them for their wars after being taught how to live on this foreign land that was not theirs. So this beautiful landscape, isn't that beautiful? The land of opportunity. Another fun fact. People white folks in Europe who were struggling, they found out that they didn't come to America. So one of the reasons why they said this is the American dream is because what they found out is if I come to America, I will get, I'm sorry, I got distracted by something that popped up on the screen. They will get advantages simply by the color of their skin. That's why a lot of people came. Another fun fact was when people got in trouble, like through the criminal system, stealing, robbing, raping, killing, whatever, instead of sending them in prison in Europe, guess what they sent them? They sent them to America to rid themselves of them people. So they sent them to America. And some of these slides were from yesterday. And again, some of these, I got to update these numbers, but this is what I have for now. But it still stands true that most of the people who are rich are white: Congress, governor, military, president, vice president, House, Freedom Caucus, current president, cabinet, or press cabinet, white. But here's another fun fact. During the Reconstruction, there was a lot of people, there was a lot of Black people in those spots. And then they had to rearrange the laws all over again to push them out again. And another fun, President Obama was not the first Black president of the United States of America. Why is that important? Because if we don't know our history, then we will be ignorant to the possibilities of what we can do. And people from Africa, there was kings and queens over there. It's not the pot belly and all the diseases that they like to push out there. It's still a rich country. And if it wasn't, then why so many white people living over there in Africa right now? So people tell people go back to Africa, but then you're there for one. And I'm waiting for people to tell Elon Musk to go back to Africa because well, anyway, I'm not gonna go on Elon Musk. Back to what I was talking about. Y'all, I digress for a minute, sorry. The TV shows and the books, anyone in the our educational system, and what the scholar historian was saying, that we were taught a bunch of lies. That's what the research is showing. We was taught that, Black women were promiscuous, that Black men were savages, that Native American and were savages, and that, our Latino brothers and sisters that come over here, that they are dope dealers and killers. And that's what is being taught. And when you look at the news, first of all, the arrest records don't lie. White people and people of color use drugs at the same amount. White men particularly commit more mass murders and serial crimes than any other. So why aren't we talking about that? Why is it so hard for us to break down? So this is where the conditioning came in at. We can know what the truth is, but it goes over our head because of the conditioning that has been done for so long that people literally have to put it in your face where you say, oh, yeah, you're right. Why? We've all been conditioned. We got to break out that conditioning and start becoming an independent thinker. When they came down to those tests, the tests that they put in schools for people to, was ASVAB tests that you have to pass on before you go to the next grade. When I was growing up and going through school, we were allowed to be critical thinkers. These kids, today, they're not trained to be critical thinkers. They train to go along, to get along, and to think along the lines of what's common, right? And so they did a study, and I know this because they did a study after, like, how did Trump get in office? The same kids that had started doing this testing, they just went along because it was the thing to do, and they didn't want to be anything different or do anything different and look or separate themselves from what was common. That's what part of the research has shown as to how Mr. Trump got in office in the first place. So be critical thinkers, please. How can I get white benefits? Not all white people are part of the system. There's people of color, of all colors, who have said, okay, I have bought into the ideology. I want some of these privileges, so I will step on whoever I need to step on, and I will say what I need to say in order to get some of these white benefits. So be willing to acclimate to the U.S. standard, be willing to pledge your allegiance to the U.S. and no other country, be willing to turn a blind eye to the truth, and never allow yourself to be uncomfortable. And that's how you can get white benefits, no matter what color you are. Look what they did with Herschel Walker. Do you think he was the best candidate for that seat? Yeah, no. They picked him. They pick yes people. And in my opinion, I think they plan on Kanye's West mental illness to do what they're doing. He's participating, but I still think they're planning on it. And then you have people like Clarence Thomas. You have people like Mr. Scott out of South of North Carolina. As long as you're willing to play the game, then you can get those privileges despite the color you are. It goes back to when they say, I have friends of color. These are the type of friends of color they're talking about. They're not talking about people like me. Truth versus reality. Again, truth allows for growth. Reality allows for you to stay the same. So what that means is you can take a fact and you can twist it and bend it and morph it to what you need it to be in order for you not to have to make any changes, versus saying, wow, this is what the truth is. I need to function differently. I need to act differently, and I need to be different. I need to engage more. I need to explore my world, explore and expand my world. I need to reach out to those who makes me uncomfortable. I need to engage. So what do you tell yourself, excuse me, to justify how you're showing up and why you're showing up? So you will see some of these slides from yesterday are familiar, but excuse me, but this is a prime example how you can take something from one presentation and bring it to another and still make it make sense. The same playbook America has done with the Blacks, the Native American, the Muslims, and LGBTQ. You got it. Because of the condition that I've been talking about since we started, our attitudes and our stereotypes, it affects our understanding. It affects our decision making, our behaviors without our even realizing it. So when people tell you, you're coming off strong, or you being rude, or I don't like how you said that, or down low, that seems like you won't use the word microaggression. So here's a microaggression. A microaggression is when something happened, you're like, because it's so subtle. It's like, I don't know I can't pinpoint it, but I don't like the way they did or said or acted or whatever the case may be. If you feel that way and you just can't pinpoint it, 9 times out of 10, you just been hit with a microaggression. So again, this is worth repeating. Racism at its most basic level is the lens through which people interpret, naturalize, and reproduce inequities, as we all struggle to truly see one another due to the conditions that has been imposed upon us through accumulations of lies and deceit. It has become the breeding ground for implicit bias and racial disconnection. And this is why we feel guilt, and why we feel shame, and why we can't see each other. We've been conditioned not to. I'm trying to help break through that. That is why it is so difficult for us to have real conversations about real things that matter, things that heal. Racism is not a white issue. It's not. It is a systematic structural issue that builds the dominant culture into the position of power, the white culture. The system opposes those who don't identify as white. Our biases go where we go, in our homes, in our workplace, schools, community, etc. It is critical for we, the people, to fix what has been broken in ourselves, our community, and our society. I don't want to leave the Irish out and the Italians out, and what I mean, and or the Germans out. They too, but a lot of this was choice though. A lot of us didn't have choices, like the Native American, Mexicans, and I know you're supposed to say Latino, but I'm representing people who are proud Mexicans, so I don't want to leave them out by saying Latinx, or just saying like Latinx. But they came over and they changed their names so their names won't sound so German or Italian or whatever the case may be, because they too made that sacrifice to buy into the American way. I did a training over the summer, and one lady came up. She's a passing, I think she's from Iran. She said she strategically renamed her kid, or gave her kids American names so they won't get teased, bullied, or beat up in school. And that's so unfortunate. Unseen discrimination, not necessarily overt, it can be obscene. Yeah. Preference to increase advantage of groups already advantage. In group, out group bias, favoritisms, we do that. Acknowledge implicit bias, how they can create barriers. So I was talking earlier, Statistics shows that when you are a person of color when you are a white person providing service to someone who don't look like you or someone who do look like you, when you're providing service to someone who look like, I'm just starting over because I just messed that up. When you're providing service to someone who look like you, statistics shows that we give those people more of the benefit of the doubt. They're more capable, they're more understandable, they're more relatable. And when we are working with someone who don't look like us, then we give them less credit. We dumb them down. We don't meet them where they are because we feel like we need to be in charge because they don't know any better. And with that, it shows that a lot of people of color and poor people, they do not continue with services because they feel disrespected, they don't feel heard, and they feel like you're trying to push your agenda on them. And and there's one situation where, and with the LGBT community, there was one person who came in who tried to commit suicide because, it's just hard being in that life sometimes for some people. And when they went to the hospital, the doctor refused to acknowledge their pronouns, which was the reason why they tried to commit suicide in the first place. So it create barriers, it create false relationships. It don't allow for us to really connect. It don't allow for us to expand our understanding of the people across from us, because we have this agenda, because we have this conditioning, because we know what's best. Not so much. Good intentions are not good enough. Yes, you can have good intentions, but the impact of that sometimes, it doesn't fare well. And all you got to do is just learn from it and keep going like the engine that could. I think I can, and you can. Collect data, monitor inequities, monitor them so you know where they're at. And if you want to push against it, then you know how to insert your privilege if you do have. And even though, people who are educated, let's just talk about some of the privileges. It's not just being white. You have the top privilege if you're white, educated, have money, American born, cisgender, Christian. There's about 10 criteria. Oh, able body between the ages of 18 and 64. After that, you're more of a target. But I do have some agency, educated, cisgender. So we do have some agency, even though we're not, white. Reduce discretion. Behaving or speaking in such a way to avoid causing offense. Now, that's going to take practice, okay? Because we're trying to do something new. America has always said that we are a melting pot. And if you're a steel worker, what I understand it, a melting pot is when all of the soot, the dark stuff goes to the bottom and the cream rises to the top. So I'm not a big fan of we're a melting pot. I'm more of we're a crock pot. Let's throw us all in and get the best flavors ever, right? Speak such a way to avoid offense. So yes, we are going to be offensive to people because that's what we've trained ourselves, or we've been trained. Now, we didn't train ourselves. We didn't know, and we're not responsible for what we didn't know until we know it. Then now we're responsible because now we know better. Now we got to do better. Objective processing, development or improvement of some type of processing, doing something. Whatever processes that are in place, like for instance, HR. I've been working with HR for a more equitable way of doing things. And so what we decided to do is, like, if someone is reporting something that's going on, it don't matter what it is, and there's an investigation, there's no finding, then what happens is they go back to the person. I said we because I'm involved, but they go back to the person and say, there's no finding, but how would you like to proceed? Would you like to have a conversation with this person? Would you like for us to suggest training for this person? How would you like? So it's not just we don't find any findings, so go on. We want people to know we heard you and we want to work with you. Tell us how. And that's how we bring about change. Inviting people to the conversation who have been injured and not suggesting that this is just, and this is how it was when I first got here. That's just how it is. That's the rules. Well, it doesn't work for all of us. That's what they need to know. Ooh, let me calm down, y'all. Okay. Promote workforce diversity and inclusion. You can have diversity, but that doesn't mean you have inclusion. And there's one thought that had came up. Understand something. Corporate America, and it has trickled down to everybody else, from profit to nonprofit. They were getting sued left and right, and the people who was bringing the lawsuit was winning those lawsuits against discrimination, right? So they really didn't care about generating or cultivating an environment that works for everybody. They just didn't want to get sued no more. So they started these. And if you ever been in any of these training and you found it offensive, trust me, I've been in them, I've seen them, and this is why I started doing them myself. I don't think that I'm the best speaker ever, but I will tell you that I speak truth to power, and I will. And if you ever come show up for me, I'm gonna always tell you the truth. You know, it may not always come out smooth and pretty, but you're gonna get the truth. So what happened was they created this system to where, okay, we're going to make sure everybody get this EDI training, equity, diversity, inclusion training. And so if I go complain to HR and say that, you know, so-and-so was discriminated against me and they found evidence of it, we're just going to fire so-and-so. And that resolves our problem. It doesn't resolve the problem, because the problem still exists, and the person that they just fired, they could bring in someone the same or if not worse. And they just keep going through this rotation just so they won't get sued. They don't really care about us coming together. They don't want us to come together. Why? Because we would interrupt their system and the way it is right now and the way it works for them. They don't want that. Trust and believe. Recognize bias in documentation. There was a case where a family of color, a child of color was taken away from the biological parents, was given to one of the paternal grandparents. The paternal grandparents was doing everything she was told to do by the system. The child came to the sexual assault unit and was being, getting treatment, getting therapy. And then here comes walking a CPS worker wanting to walk in the session, further traumatize the child, take the child out because they have orders to, or whatever the case may be. The manager had to step in and say, no, you're going to wait. I don't care what you have. You're going to wait until this session is over. You're not going to re-traumatize this child. Now, we all question, if this was a white family, would they have done this? Would they have done this seriously? So, but to get to the documentation piece. So grandmother was upset, as she should have been. So after everything was said and done, the family left. The white clinician is typing up her notes. Child arrived to session with paternal grandmother. Grandmother got upset out there in the waiting room. She was hard to redirect. She was hard to communicate with, and totally left out the content. Totally left out the fact that why grandma was so upset. And so and thank goodness that the supervisor seen it all, seen the note, and kicked it back to the therapist and said, no, you write the content in, because this is the kind of writing that prevent people of color from staying together in a family. They are quick. The system, CPS, are quick to take Black and brown children and indigenous people. Right now, they're fighting that right now, because there's a lot of white family, not a lot. There's a case right now where a white family wants to adopt Native American children, but there's laws and rules in place saying no, because of what has happened to these kids already, right? And but some white people just don't take no for an answer. They think everything is theirs and they can do whatever they want to do, and that's not the case. And I hope, well, anyway, imagery and role modeling. Look at mugshots, and I wish it was in person, because I do have mugshots. They take a mugshot of a white person who's been convicted of rape. He's smiling like it's his senior pictures. You take a mugshot of someone who left their kids. There's one Black woman who left her kids in the car, and the way they categorized her and the way they tore her down, it was horrific. So they used imagery also to reinforce the conditioning that has already happened. Listen, look at Cops. Do you not know that all these cop shows are being, and again, I don't have anything against cops. I have cop friends, but these are some battles that we have to fight. And I'm going to be honest with you, like I told you. There are cops who are consulting on these cop shows to present what they want to present on these shows and to reinforce. And if you look at the show Cop, I stopped watching it. A lot of time they're arresting Black and brown people, when the truth of the matter is those are not all the people who goes to jail, but that's the imagery. So that's why, and it reinforces the conditioning. So when you see a person of color and it's, you want to grab your purse or you want to walk on the other side of the street, all of a sudden you're scared. Why are you scared? What happened? Is it the conditioning? Did you have an experience? What is going on here that you are walking away or feel like you need to protect yourself from someone who don't pose a threat to you? And then accountability. We have to be accountable for how we show up and the impact that we have. Do I have implicit bias? Yes, every last one of us have implicit bias. Again, this is the system that created this for us, whether we like it or not. How to manage it? Become aware of your own biases. So again, there's the Harvard implicit bias test that you can take. And again, as I said yesterday, there's the conscious and then there's the subconscious. The subconscious hold a lot more information than the conscious mind. So if something caused you to jerk or to be scared or whatever, investigate that. Where is it coming from? And is it justified? There's a lot of things that have changed in our society. It's a lot of truth that are finally starting to come out. There's a lot of contributions that a lot of people have made to create the society what it is. A lot of things, the postal services is the way I understand the traffic light. That was the inventions of Black people. And Black people, Native American people, Indigenous people, we are very creative people, not necessarily because we wanted to be, it's because of survival. And then you have those who are empowered, they will take what we invented, patent it, and then make money off of it. And we don't see a dime. Same thing in the medical field when they did that to they took her cancer cells and use it. I can't think of her name right now, but I know you guys know what I'm talking about. To better the health for white people. This woman, her name's at the tip of my tongue. Her family never got a dime, and this woman's cells saved lives. Personal experience as a professional of color in healthcare. I will tell you what I've seen is that when, I think this is a good example. So here where I work at, there's a drop-in center, and that's for homeless people to come in so they can hang out, get out the elements, they can eat, play games, watch TV, so on and so forth. There was a white man and a Black man who got into it. The white man was antagonizing the Black man. The Black man got louder and louder and louder, and they put the Black man out, but the white man got to stay. So one observant white clinician said, he's seen what happened. So as I mentioned, I don't know if it was this today or yesterday, but all white people do, all they have to do is just say this happened to them. And a lot of time it gets credence is lended to them saying, probably it is. But if someone of color says something happened to them, they want to investigate, prove it. They want you to prove it. So one of the reasons why what is said why people of color are so loud and could be intimidating and threatening, because they don't feel seen, and they don't feel heard, and so they feel like they have to talk louder and louder and louder to be seen and to be heard. And then white people see that as a threat. That was an example. I will take your questions now, but I'm going to leave this slide up. So here's some resources, and this and this, some resources. But I also want to tell you that I follow, for those people who want a more like, I would say, I won't say religion, because religion is like routine. I want to say spiritual person. So Pastor Ron Carpenter, he talks about racism on his platform, and he's a mega pastor. I follow him because he's awesome. We talked about Amber Ruffin yesterday. John Oliver, someone else I follow. John Stewart is someone I followed. And another thing I do want to bring up, and so I said earlier, I think I said earlier, maybe it was yesterday, but I think it was today, Christianity is based in the caste system. And if Catholics owned slaves, and if you want to know more about that history, just look up Georgetown University, the history of Georgetown University, how many slaves the Catholics had to sell in order to pay off this. And slavery wasn't just in the South, it was also in the North. So it would behoove you to understand that just because it looked different down there in the South, I mean, it looked different in the South than it does up north, but it did happen a lot up north as well. And I think that will be my final thoughts before and I'm ready to take any questions you guys may have. I can't see any questions.
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself. Woo, that is a lot. Sharonda, you just laid it out as I expected you would, and such a good, I know it wasn't meant to be a part two, but I think, like you said, we need to keep telling the truth so people can and hear it and believe it and do their own research. But so we do have, you know, and just to, for the slides, we will have the links for things that Sharonda mentions. And we'll also, you know, look through the chat and see if there are other things that we can share. And so what we do is we take this webinar and we'll record it. We are recording, obviously, but we'll put it into a video link that you can get to. We'll have the slides and we'll put as many links as we can capture. Thank you, Kristen, for putting some handouts on the chat as well. So we do have some questions. So
yes,
will you please, I'm excited to hear this too, getting a lot of love in the chat as always. Do you think there are, nope, my question thing moved. Will you please explain intersectionality and its implications?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure I can. Well, me being a Black woman, the intersexuality and what's the part of it? The other part of it?
And its implications.
Can the person ask that question? Can they unmute themselves so I can better understand?
Yeah, let me see if I can. I don't know if Leslie, there she is. Leslie, if you want to talk. Now I lost her and we have a very large, okay.
Leslie Davis.
Yeah, Leslie, if you want to speak, I think I have allowed you to unmute yourself.
It's still on mute for
but
her.
We don't know if they want to, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if they want to talk.
Oh, resources.
So I think, you know, what I just pulled up was, you know, the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to an individual or a group, creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So I think, you know, what I hear people talk about is, you know, we are not just one identity.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
And there are multiple things. I saw someone chat in about if you're scared on the street, you see a, you know, Black man walking by or whatever. And I felt the same, that sometimes as women, we're just conditioned, and sometimes rightfully so, to be very watchful when we're out on the street. So we all have several identities. I don't know if that's something that you know, care to elaborate on more, but how we have all these different identities, how do we get seen and see others for more than just, say, example, just, and it's a big one, but race is one of the identities that people hold. So I don't know if that helps at all. That's what I'm guessing, maybe.
But my thing is always that a lot of fear is erased when we look at people's humanity. We get comfortable with the exterior, the intersexuality of other people when we know the person, because that then falls to the wayside. Once we connect with a person, it really won't matter after that. And just think about a close friend, a close family member, a niece, a nephew, whomever. Think about how much you love them and how whatever comes their way, it doesn't matter if they're gay or lesbian. Let's say, and there was this one lady was saying how she didn't want her kids to hang out with. And we got to really be careful how we present ourselves, even around the people that loves us, because we can keep them from showing their authentic self to us because of what we're saying about our belief system about certain groups of people, right? So one lady was like, she was telling her, don't hang out with them and them. She made LGBTQ and people with drug addiction and other. And guess what happened? Her child became them. Now what? So her love for her child made her start accepting the others, because now her child is the other, if that makes sense.
Well, no, I was just listening, and I'll probably get some of these facts a little bit wrong, but I was just hearing someone on NPR this morning talking about conservatives against discrimination or something. And so wanting to be more open, and are more people supportive of gay marriage, and what do the trends say, and what do the people in different parties think. But it's no surprise this person is someone who happens to have a trans son. And so it does seem that until you have a personal, it's just,
Yes.
you have to have, I don't think it's required, but it sure does seem more likely if you have a personal experience where you get to humanize this idea or these identities that you think but you don't.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, that was just a reflection I was having when you were speaking about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah, it's really easy to say, oh yeah, that was, and then you're like, oh, it's happening here to my family. And so yeah.
And I will tell you, I'll be honest with you, like when I first got here, at my job currently, I was not really being heard. I wasn't taken seriously when I was sharing what I was experiencing and what I was seeing and what other people. And so, you know what I did? I created a community of folks, a committee. I created a committee called the Underground Railroad. I am a huge fan of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad and what they achieved and what they accomplished. So when they didn't hear me, then I went and found people who were like-minded and was having some of the same issues. And we all came together once a month so we can talk about what's happening and strategize how we're going to move things forward to where people then begin to hear what we had to say. From that, so now instead of them having to be us against them, they brought us to the table because they seen that we was not going to back down and our voices was going to be heard. And so then after that, I was on the EDI committee, and I'm still on the ethics committee. And when I tell you that I'm the only one who don't have a big title on those committees, but have the biggest voices on those committees, that's because they no longer looking at my title. Title is another thing that's very divisive, but they're not looking at my title. They're not looking at my color. They're not looking at the fact that I'm a woman. They're not looking at the fact that I don't have a management or director's position. They're looking at the fact that she has something worthy to say that we need to hear that could help us. And that came after I had to separate myself. I don't think I talked about how President Obama how he got elected because he could finish a sentence. He seemed smart. So he seemed very different in their minds than other Black people. Black people are highly intelligent. Native Americans are highly intelligent. Latinx is highly intelligent. It's just that you failed to see us. So now that you're paying attention, you're seeing what we already knew in the first place. But now I'm at the table. I'm no longer on the menu. So when they wouldn't do anything for me, I did it for myself. And for those who were like-minded, and they were not all people of color. There was white people, there was, and so then we start having people with bigger titles, like psychiatrists, doctors, nurses, mental health. They all came to the table and said, we see what you see from our perspective as well. How can we support? And so I was always told that if you ever want to make changes, find out who makes the money. bring them to the table, and then they will begin to listen. Now their money is on the line. They can't fire all of us. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, there's so much we can talk about. Throwing in some resources that have been mentioned, as well as each of the TPC networks have collected a lot of resources and toolkits or links where you can learn more kind of around these general issues. But I want to get back to the next question, because you did mention some client scenarios. I think that's so powerful. You said to me earlier in our planning of this, stories are very powerful. Now, I know it's a story, it's one example, it's not data collected over time in a double-blind study, but these things happen every day. And I think, again, just like having someone in your circle experience something where you didn't know about that issue before, I think hearing a scenario that it's just, maybe that case manager didn't even really think to mention the CPS person visiting because they were conditioned to think, well, that's just normal. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think those are very powerful. But back to that client kind of situation, someone asked, do you think there are good ways to collect feedback directly from clients, specifically on a clinician's multicultural competence? I think there's a variety of topics we could explore there, but how, first off, and I promise I'll let you speak, because that's who we really want to hear from, but it blows my mind that we rarely ask for feedback from the people we serve. And I'm not saying I found a perfect way to do it, but I remember hearing that, I'm sure easily 2 decades ago about, we could just ask them, what did you think of this session? What did you think of our time today? But we don't want to know, maybe. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just, and there's different ways you can ask that. There's different ways to be culturally relevant or, conscious of literacy or other issues or, the power dynamic. But this is a very specific feedback thing. Have you seen that? Have you done that? How can people get that input from people we're serving?
So two things, at least for us, we use the Epic system. So the client have access to our notes. So if we wrote something that they don't like or appreciate or don't think that was, that they said or whatever, they can bring that back to our attention. And if they don't trust that we would do anything about it or their relationship is not there, then they can take it, to the next level. And then we get counseled on it. That never happens. That has never happened to me. But that is a way. And that's one thing I do appreciate about the Epic system is that people can go into my chart and look and see what's been written about them. And I think that's important because now people are being more careful about what they're writing. So then my question is, do they really not know, back to that therapist who left out content, did she really not know what she was doing? And because why are you so careful now that the clients can see your notes? Why are we now more careful that clients can see our notes, for one? For two, there's a when I'm done with a counseling session, I will ask them, how you feeling? Or I'll ask them, was this helpful? Was this something you want to work on? I always check in with them. And even as a mom, I check in with I want to know how I'm showing up. I ask my kids, what kind of mom am I? And they were like, I don't want to, but then they tell me. I need to know, I want to know how I'm impacting, not just professionally, I want to know how I'm impacting my children. I want to make sure that I am bringing them up in a way to where they're inclusive, to where their minds are open, to where I can combat the conditionings that is happening with them. I need to know this. Oh, and you brought up research, and I want you guys to be very careful of what you accept for research, because when I was going through school, we was always told to find out who's doing the research and who stands to benefit, because I know that research can be skewed so people can get what they want or get the results that they want. In the book Medical Apartheid, they was doing this case study on if and they specifically said, do not do this on white children. That right there is a red flag. So if a child's older sibling has gone to jail or prison for violent behavior, then they want to go into the household and see if the sibling possessed the violent gene. And they will pay, and these families are poor. These families are poor. A lot of times these experiments are people who are poor. They go into, and I believe this is out of New York, if I'm not mistaken, gave the family the sign or release of information or, waiver to be able to do this stuff with their children, gave them $100. $100. They took it. They're poor. And so they said, we want to give them this medication. We want to see if it's going to spark any type of rage, anger, whatever the case may be. But here's the cool part about it. The medication they gave them did induce, indeed, rage, anger, and so on and so forth. So they can say, aha, I told you they're like this. But that's not what happened. They gave them something to make their results match what they say was going to happen. So we got to be careful what we accept as research. And just because something hasn't been researched, it doesn't mean, I'm sorry, and just because something hasn't been researched, it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. Even evidence-based practices, you got to be on the lookout for that. You got to be on the lookout for the gold standard. What makes it the gold standard? Who did you participate? Who was your participants to make this a gold standard?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much that could be, but it'd be helpful to know if there were, I'm sure there are tools out there where you can get, feedback in a way that doesn't put pressure on people, where you might get at, do you feel understood? It doesn't even have to be specific competence in a particular culture, but, yeah, so I think it's a good question, and I'm sorry, it's no great simple answers here. There are so many questions. Okay. Can you comment on anti-Blackness and how people can call it out? Yeah, and so this person's saying, when Kanye came for Black people, there was radio silence, but when he spoke on others, he was canceled. So
it was, I don't know.
Take that one on?
Yeah, it was not radio silence. I mean, Roland Martin was going in. There was a lot. So here's the deal. I listen to Black media, okay? And one of the reasons why I listen to Black media is because they tackle the issues that affect us the most. A lot of time, mainstream media don't pick up the things that we would want to know about. And we was not radio silence on Kanye West, and we haven't been. Trust and believe. So I don't know where you're looking, but no, we have not been silent on him. We've been going in on, I'm trying to be, like I said, he has mental issues. I know this, and I'm trying to give space for that, but I can only give so much space for that. But no, we all go in. The people, the radio stations that I listen to, the blogs that I read. Yeah, no, he don't get a pass. He does not get a pass. Or Candace Owen, for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Here's another question, kind of in the work professional setting. What are your recommendations for white people who fear retaliation from coworkers or HR when speaking out against or challenging isms or biases? What are your thoughts on becoming knowledgeable about federal policies that can act for protectors, for advocacy, and anti-racist work, for example? I'm sure you've seen folks that want to be allies, and maybe they fear some of the same things, maybe not to the same extent as someone of color or in those other categories, but just want to give you time to speak to that.
I would always say go in groups, go in numbers. And so let me give you another example. I got stories for days, okay? We was in an all-staff meeting. And one of my white colleagues, we had some openings, and one of my white colleagues was saying, hey, we service a variety of people, so we need to do our best to start hiring more people of color, so our patients can have a more variety of services from people who are not just all white. And she said, as I look around, she said, it's indicative of what they're saying, a bunch of white faces. And the director said, that's because white people are better at showing up and getting things done. Oh, what? So it gets better, you guys. The white people looked around the room and they was looking at, it's like 3 or 4 Black, people of color in the room. And they all looking at our faces like, and I just sat back. I didn't say anything. And one of the white girls called her out and was like, no, you need to walk that back. Did you hear what you just said? Did you see the impact you just had? Did you see the people's faces and blah, 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 blah. And she was like, well, what I was trying to say, Sharonda, tell them what I was trying to say. So you want to say that you guys are better at things, but then you want to ask this Black woman who you just offended to explain your behaviors? No, when I tell you it was a rush of people who went to HR, it was damn near everybody in that room went up to HR and complained that she's no longer here. But everybody went up there and they went out in numbers. And I kind of felt, and so a lot of white people was feeling guilty because, again, they look past our intersectionality and seen us, and they work with us. They know how we operate. They was knocking on our door saying, hey, I'm not gonna lie, I have white guilt. Can I take you and go buy you a coffee? Can I, they just want to do something to make themselves feel better. But I said, sit in it. Sit in it. This is not a punishment. This is to figure out, why do you feel this way when you did absolutely nothing? You can't own what other people do. White people are not monoliths. Black people are not. None of us are. We are individuals, and that's how we got to start seeing each other and stop blaming a whole culture of people for what 1 or 2 or 3 people do. That's ridiculous. But that's what we do. That's what we've been trained to do.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of, I know this wasn't the presentation that you have given called So You Want to Be an Ally. And I imagine that, a lot of your content, is woven throughout, because some of the same basic things people still need to hear. I definitely remember from 3.5 years ago, that slide of who's in power, and even if the numbers have shifted a little bit, it's basically probably the same. I think, to be an ally, to do the work, you talked yesterday about what, someone asked the question, what can I do as a perhaps white and or cisgendered person, but someone who wants to do better, wants to do the needed work, to be an ally, to be more understanding. And you had a great answer for that. And I know some people may have been here yesterday too, but I wondered if you could talk about that, because I thought your response was really poignant for people. So people are saying, hey, I want to learn, and yet it's not your job to teach somebody, right? But
Yes.
But you had a nice way of describing that.
What I said yesterday, and then I'm going to add on, I'm going to pull something out of the Ally workshop. What I said yesterday is, I will direct people, like I'll give resources and podcasts and authors and so on and so forth, or events that may be coming up, or like Tallahassee Colt might be coming in town. There's another doctor, I can't think of his name, but his book is called Black Man in a White Coat. So when these events happen, this is such a, I got so many things running through my head. I would invite people, I would let people know when these people are coming. And so we can go together sometimes. And then afterwards we can go have a coffee or whatever. And we can just process what they heard versus what I heard.